There's a lot going on in the news this week, and looking back at the Pride Parade over the weekend, and I ended up seeing more coverage of really the hate groups that were marching alongside, and criticism of Detroit police. Detroit police came out, Nolan, and said, "Look, we were trying to offset disaster."
And they did a good job.
In what this group is there anything though different that police need to do or tell the public going on before something like this?
They had 10, 12 troublemakers show up of the white supremacists, and about the same number of Antifa, and they're determined to clash. Everywhere they go, they're determined to fight with each other. Detroit police got a heads up on it. They stayed between the two groups and prevented something ugly from happening here. You had these nuts out here with guns. Anything could have happened. And at the end of the day, nothing happened, no violence. Everybody walked away safe. They did their jobs.
Are we going to be seeing more storylines like this playing out around the country?
I don't know. I mean, the idea here is to get attention, right? That's what they want.
And they got it.
Is for people to pay more attention to them than to the thing that they're protesting, and they got it here. I thought DPD did a fine job. Their job is to make sure that this can unfold in a constitutional manner, right? You have a constitutional right to free speech to assemble that way. You don't have a right to say some of the things that they were saying to even the police officers, saying racist things toward the black police officers. You don't actually have a right to say that, and you could have been arrested. I mean, they could have been arrested. That would have elevated things and gotten things out of hand. So I think it was, DPD showed some restraint and said, we're just going to make sure that things don't explode in this kind of powder keg.
You had 50,000 people there, celebrating, having a nice parade, and 20 troublemakers, and they shouldn't get all the attention. And I think the police, Chief Gregg, deserves praise rather than criticism here.
Another thing I saw on the news this week, and I really recommend it, was a deep dive in the Detroit News talking about the problems at Benton Harbor, the school district there, and they're looking at closing down the high school and an alternative high school, leaving about 700 kids that would then have to find alternate places to go to school. And to me though, Nolan, when I was reading it, it really kind of struck as a bigger picture of, are we doing the right things for schools that are in trouble, that have financial debt? That's one side, but really the achievement issues. And is the Michigan Department of Education kind of having enough interventions or having the right interventions in place to be able to turn around a school once it gets to a certain point?
Obviously not, because they didn't turn it around. I'm no big fan of the Department of Education, but this is a school where 0% of its 11th graders are ready for college. You're destroying young lives here. You're ruining futures even before these kids' lives begin, and you have to do something. They tried to turn it around, they put plans in place. They don't seem to have any capability of turning that school around, and so why should the kids pay the price? Why should the kids, 3% of third graders could read at grade level. They would be better off staying home watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. You would learn more.
So another question could be, Stephen, how long do you give a district like that, or a school like that? But then knowing the feelings that many of these students and families have, saying, "Gosh, don't shut down this school. This is our school."
So where you started is where the conversation ought to be, which is what we're doing, and it's not just what we're doing with troubled districts like this. It's what we're doing with education more generally. In this state, the funding for your education is tied to your zip code. This is one of the last states in the union that allows that to be true. Benton Harbor is a place that's lost a lot of population and tax base, so it's no wonder that its schools can't support themselves, can't figure out how to keep the lights on and keep quality instruction in the classroom in a way that makes some sense. Until we start talking about it in those terms, we're shuffling deck chairs, really. You can open schools some places, you can close schools some places, but the truth is that almost every district that's not super wealthy is going to face this kind of problem over the next decade or so as populations change, as we continue to lose population in lots of places of the state. These school districts that we have are not sustainable. It's also true that we have, 477 school districts in a state of 9 million people. That's crazy. The overhead for that is not sustainable either. But we are nowhere near talking about how we might redesign a system that was focused on making sure there's enough money to educate kids, whether they are in Benton Harbor or Bloomfield Hills.
Yeah, you're not even really you haven't even talked about the teachers that would be leaving
right?
as well,
Quality.
leaving a district.
Well, there's a lot of things wrong with education in Michigan, and it's not just money. In fact, the money we spend here is comparable to states that are doing much better. There's another story in the Detroit News on Tuesday talking about an Upper Peninsula principal up in Houghton who came in and produced tremendous results in a poor district. He did so by demanding best practices, best education practices, and holding teachers accountable for results. The union pushed back, and he's gone now. So we don't necessarily support reformers and support the things that work.
No,
right.
I mean,
Well,
the big problem is that we're ignorant in this state of the examples around the country that would lead us forward, right? There are other states who are doing it differently, doing everything differently, and it is about money. It's always about money. It's not just about money, but it is about money.
They didn't start with money in those places.
I'm sorry.
Tennessee didn't start with money. Florida didn't start with money.
Massachusetts did,
Colorado
Maryland did,
didn't
and
start
they're ahead
with
of all
money.
of those states. So the states that do the best,
Tennessee's
the
ahead
top
of us,
five,
too.
No, the top 5 states nationwide started with funding. They started with the question of how much money do you need to educate a kid who is in an urban environment versus a wealthy environment.
We have seen
not done
seen
that.
studies
You've got
that
a lot of
Michigan needs to
well-funded
spend a little bit
districts in the
more,
bottom 10
but
too.
there's a lot more to it besides funding.
You need
There's
money
a lot more
and
to it.
other things.
All
but
right,
you need
well,
money.
stay put here for just a moment.